one other note before my presentation. I'm from kind of more like from a startup background, so not a corporation background, but I will show you a story about how we, what's our project actually, and our story about how we are rewriting the whole application right now. So I will show you a rewrite, upgrade options, what we discovered and what we did consider before we jumped into rewrite our startup, our setup, JavaScript part, summary, and questions, and maybe answers as well. So Redmenta is a worksheet library and worksheet creator tool. It's mostly used in primary education, but we have users from universities and company internal education as well. The application has been in production for around 10 years now, and we have many registered users and daily active users, mainly from Hungary, and thanks to COVID during online education. The application itself is old school, bad designed, bad architecture in terms of extendability. So it was hard or nearly impossible to develop it further. And actually, I was a high school student when I started the project with my friends. So you can guess the actual quality of the code and the database and the naming conventions and so on. But yeah, we had to develop it further, and we need to add more features to it. Yeah, paid features, of course, and fix legacy bugs. A few screenshots. This is the old design with the updated footer and updated menu bar, and that's the new design. And this is the screen where the students can fill the worksheets online. So we considered two approaches. One is rewrite from scratch. So when we need to, during we would rewrite it, we could add new features to it. There's no need to touch the legacy code. And that's the dream of every developer, right? A greenfield project, you can decide everything, you can use the latest technologies, the latest best practices, but when you release it, you need to test it carefully and in detail compare with the old functionalities, which is already in production. And the larger the gap, the riskier is to develop and validate the new features, the new application you are working on. And imagine where there's an urgent need to add a new feature for a sponsor, for example. There's a high risk of a failed release or a failed deadline, actually. And few examples for that. Nice logo. I work for Coding Sans and on a project for a UK customer who wanted to port their application from Silverlight to Angular. Actually, it's kind of okay for a rewrite because there is no urgent or hard deadline at the end of the project, except the support of the Silverlight itself. So that's okay to rewrite, but there's another story. Thanks to God, I didn't work on that project, and sorry for the PTSD. But that was an internal project to introduce a V2 of a website for a client, and they considered that the project is small enough to rewrite it from scratch. And that was a V1 in production already, and that was a hard deadline to meet for the project, kind of, I don't know, pályázati pénz or something like that. And the customer asked new features, new design for our website, and because of the hard deadline, it was a high risk of rewriting, and I know that there was a lot of pizza and sleep inside the office. And there's another example of a form builder project I saw at the company I went to after Coding Sans and before full-time at Redmenta. Then there was a form builder project with a too large scope and the company just canceled the project after half a year of development because they didn't release in time, and they failed to validate the project compared to with the old already in production one. They had to add new form fields. Of course, it's easy to add to the legacy, but they wanted to introduce a new conditional logic setup, and they decided to implement only for the new module, and they failed. And also I want to mention startups, small startups who can rewrite their application in 3 weeks or something like that. I'm really jealous of small startups. And I wanted to mention Skype, but I'm not sure if it's a relevant example because the old interface of Skype desktop was written in Delphi, and they tried to rewrite it in a C-based language, and it took a lot of resources from Microsoft after they bought Skype, and today nobody uses Skype. So maybe they failed, but I don't know the whole story of it. Option B is modular rewrite. So when we do a modular rewrite, we can release in smaller pieces, so we can eliminate the risk of a failed release. We can compare and validate less changes, meet shorter deadlines, and we can add new features or changes incrementally, so no scared or angry users and happy sponsor on the other hand. So it's like a better solution. But if you choose too large scope, you can face similar issues like as with option A. We need to connect the new part of the application with the legacy system somehow. We need to identify the touch points, interfaces where the new setup can communicate or work together with the old part of the application. There's a little extra work there to connect, but it can work, and we can design and develop modules future-proof. Mostly the newly developed code can be reused in the future. To be honest, I wrote these sentences in November, before the original time of this meetup. So half year passed, and now I can say that the code we develop is a good base for your future refactor. So we won't rewrite, but we are not jövőlátó in English, I don't know. We don't see the futures, we are developers. We discussed it during the preparation. And in case of any delay, the legacy system is still operating. So if something goes wrong, you can revert to the previous version, and that's all, like a checkpoint in a video game. Examples. For coding Sans, I worked with a US customer as well, and they started using Angular back in time when the Angular team released the new version in parallel with AngularJS. So their application was written with AngularJS, and they started using Angular via the upgrade adapter. It was a thing back in time. So there was no need to rewrite the whole application, just starting using Angular. To be honest, we didn't know how to do good job in Angular, but it was a good practicing project back in time, and also the whole setup was slow. So if you used AngularJS or heard stories about that, it was really slow. So the whole setup was still slow. We learned how to use Angular, and after a point when the whole developer team was confident enough, they started using Angular only. They introduced the new Angular only setup for their dashboard actually, and as a V2, and they connected the two dashboard versions via routing, via external routing V1 and V2, and step by step, module by module, they deprecated and deleted or replaced the old version of the dashboard. And the other examples I saw at the same company where I saw the failed form builder project with smaller scopes, smaller modules. They were able to rewrite, port their large application from Backbone and Ruby on Rails backend to React frontend. So our setup, our story, the legacy application is written in PHP. Maybe that the reason is I started learning with PHP and I got that book in school. Sad story. The smallest possible module is a page. So and then we considered between the two options, considering the routing, the lang resources, user authentication, and the menu toolbar you see on the top of the page. It is the identifier of the application. So we considered both options, and then we decided to do modular rewrite instead of a greenfield project. And still we are working on it. So as the routing is in PHP, we introduced the concept of page registry in React. I will show you example how. And as the routing is in the legacy part is in PHP, we decided to use Laravel for the backend. It's still PHP. It's a Budapest JS meetup, so maybe I can say that I don't really like PHP after a while, because I still start forgetting what I wrote half a year ago. But Laravel Mix is a good thing in the universe of Laravel. I will show you example how easy it is to use React with Laravel Mix and how easy it is to just put everything inside. We use React and Tailwind CSS for the front end. And as I mentioned, as the menu toolbar is a site identifier, we implemented it in Blade templates. That's the template system in Laravel. So it's server-side rendered because it can load in kind of immediately to the header, and then the user can identify, yeah, they are on the website, on a familiar website, and the rest is loading to the body. And we use the same menu toolbar in the legacy as well. I will show you some code snippets how. After the rewrite is complete, we can remove the PHP routing and introduce a standalone application. That's the part right now. I promised my colleagues that we will do a cleanup this summer. But yeah, the plan is we can finish the rewrite by Q3. And after the presentation, I'm happy to share some other, I don't know, startup-like stories like financing and plans. But right now I'm focusing on the technical parts. So snippets. This is the Laravel Mix setup. So you can see these magic lines do everything. Actually, it's wrapping the Webpack in the background. We can extend it if needed, but it just works. And for the legacy side, we embed the same Blade template file to that legacy environment. But the template we are using at the legacy has this strange CSS rule in the root. So we had to convert the Tailwind units, rams, to pixels to be exact and to be rendered correctly at the legacy part. And that's the example how we overwrite the Tailwind config, replace the font family to the legacy one, and overwriting the primary color to the legacy one. And this is the example of the page registry. So it puts the header, the HTML headers and meta tags via some common Blade template, and we have only one HTML element there with a unique ID. It's an object. This is what we call page registry, and it iterates over there. over that and finds the corresponding ID, and if it finds one from the rendered HTML ID, then it renders the whole application itself. Yep. So our users understood the upgrade reasons and the different design over pages. So that was one thing we were afraid of, because it changes the color on the header, for example, and changes the whole UI design elements. But still, there was no bad feedback about that. And we do surveys before each module release to collect user feedbacks and possible bugs before release from the teachers. and I'm really happy that they are okay and they understood why we do this approach, and we fix bugs and we improve business logic over releases step by step. So everything what was reported from the legacy environment, known bugs, we were able to fix it. Right now we are finally adding the paid features and the business model to our project. I really hope that it will go well and we can see in few months the results. So this was our story, and these are the QR codes for the gifts. One is for the conference conference tickets, and the other is for the JetBrains license.